Well, first of all, I'm not the visionary who sees the Armageddon. I'm someone who is sitting by the side of the river, watching the waves roll by and listening to someone like Nassim Taleb, the man that coined the phrase, the black swan.
Mm-hmm.
And he points out that if you look at the bottom of the hill, there's a pond down there, and there are lots of black swans, and they're ready to take off. And he said, this is back in March of this year, I think he was on MSNBC, which I like to watch because they do bring on some great guests. I don't care for their analysis, but the guests are great. And Nassim Taleb said, look, Armageddon is just over the horizon. This is fake money. This is not real. It's all going to collapse. There is no production, and the people up the top, they have no skin in the game. So Armageddon is just over the horizon. I think what he's saying is that the financialization of our economy, the transaction fees that are the source of wealth for the top, 1 or 2% or 5%, that's not going to work much longer. And at some point, everybody is going to refuse to deal with you. Now, we're going to have a strong dollar for a while, which is not necessarily good for us for a while. I don't know how long that lasts, but at some point, that's going to change. We've already seen the petrodollar begin to move away because we watched Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. They're all marching into the BRICS architecture. And that's very important. Bank failures are just beginning. We've had the problems with First Republic. Then now we're going towards Bank of America, which looks very bad, similar to what was UBS and so forth. I think that's the number one concern. First are these bank failures that we're going to start experiencing. The tariff war, we already explained why tariffs aren't going to work, so that's a dead end. Fed tightening and easing too late. What did the Fed do? They said, well, we're going to drive down interest rates. What's happened in the bond market? Where are the yields? They're rising and rising. This is sort of like you're trapped in a room and you've got this much oxygen left in the room and everything else is underwater. And you're trying to tell yourself the fundamentals are good. I know this is going to work. And if I just blow bubbles long enough, there'll be more oxygen up there. No, I don't think so. So I think that's part of the thing. And the financial crisis that we're confronting, look at Japan, look at the United Kingdom, look at Germany, the systematic deindustrialization of the country, which is not very different to a large extent from what we've been doing to ourselves over the years by exporting manufacturing bases. And finally, gold. Gold is up 30%. Now, it's not impossible that gold could tank and then rise again. But the point is, it's gotten to 30% in how short a period? In the space of what, a year or two? And we haven't even touched on Bitcoin, and you know more about that than anybody, because that's why Bitcoin's important. That's why gold's important. All these commodities are very important because they're stores of real value. And that's what we're missing here. You can't run a fake economy on fake money for very long and get away with it. We've been doing it at least for 30 years, maybe longer. Some people want to go back to when we came off the gold standard. That may be true, but we're definitely running a fake economy with fake money. Now, what we say here at Our Country, Our Choice is that we have to focus on certain specific things. We talked about rule of law. We've got to get out of all these conflicts. These are just sapping our strength. They're wasting our time, money, and energy. We're not living in 1900. This is not the era of gunboat diplomacy. We've got to get out of this business of intervening all over the world in other people's affairs. It's just not, it's unaffordable. We can't sustain it. We don't want it. And we're creating new enemies. If you look at the United States and the world, where does the United States sit? Everybody says, well, it's between the Atlantic and the Pacific. That's right. Now, stop and hold that picture. Where was Rome at its height? It was in the middle of the Mediterranean. It was surrounded by water, and ultimately being positioned in the center of the Mediterranean made it a power in and of itself. It was an economic and financial power much more than it was necessarily a manufacturing power at that point. But everything had to cross the Mediterranean in business and commerce, and Rome profited. Right now, the Chinese and the Russians and most of the Central Asian republics are so sick of dealing with us that they're trying very hard to bypass us. Well, how do you bypass us? You've got to build rail and transportation networks that run from China, almost virtually from the coast, because China is referred to in East Asia as the banana, because if you look at where all the population is, it's shaped like a banana. It's all along the coast. There's nothing inland. I don't want to say nothing, but comparatively few people. You've got to ship the things that they're building, producing across the Eurasian continent to Poland, Ukraine, right through those corridors and into Europe. But that's not easy. Not only is it an engineering catastrophe that it takes years and tremendous investment, but it also means that you've got people all along the way who have their hands out. You want permission? You got to pay. You got to pay. You got to pay. We have a tremendous advantage, much like the Romans. We speak one language from the Atlantic to the Pacific. There are no intervening countries. There are no intervening tariffs or regulations or anything else. If we build fast sea lift that can move from France, from Rochefort, if you go on the European map and look at the western part of France, that's one of the major terminals for trains all over Europe and reaching into Asia. If we build fast sea lift from there to the East Coast and fast sea lift from the West Coast to China and back, and in the middle we build fast trains that can pick up goods and very rapidly move them at light speed across the United States, we can outpace anything they move across Central Asia because there's nothing to stop it. There's nothing to interfere with it. Why aren't we doing it? We should be doing this. You want an industrial revolution, a new one, a new scientific industrial trade revolution, a revolution in commerce? That's it. Now, we can all wait around for light, gravity, and magnetism to be related. And at some point, I'm sure we'll all be able to break the laws of fractal mathematics, and then we can say, beam me up, Scotty. But we haven't gotten there yet. And right now, things that move have to move primarily by sea and train and truck. But look at the center of the United States, the heartland. What would happen to the center of the United States if suddenly it became the crossroads of the world commerce? We've got to do these things. These are the big projects that a future president needs to invest in. And I hear nothing like that. Yeah. It's so depressing to me. That's what we need to focus on. We need to get out of the Middle East. We need to get out of Europe. These people have been there for thousands of years. Long before we showed up, they'll be fine. Let them sort it out. We need to come home and start focusing on what happens here. If we do these things, it'll take a decade or more, but we will once again be what we were just 50, 60, 70 years ago, the leading economic power in the world.